So this week, there was a vote on House Resolution 246. The bill is, and I quote here, opposing efforts to delegitimize the state of Israel and the global boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement targeting Israel. So the whole point of this resolution is to have the U.S. government officially state, we oppose BDS. We are condemning BDS. That's the whole point of this. Now, the original version of it had some teeth, okay? And the teeth were like, no, let's support efforts by the states to basically withhold any and all government contracts and money from people who support a boycott of Israel. So, in other words, it was a very, very, very clear example of an unconstitutional approach to this issue. Because they are literally saying we are going to target political speech that we don't like in a material and substantive way. Now, thankfully, there's been at least 2, maybe even 3 separate court decisions that have said in no uncertain terms, this isn't even close to legal. This is completely unconstitutional. The government, whether it's the state government or the federal government, cannot target people for political speech. We live in a free society. People could boycott whoever the hell they want to boycott, and they shouldn't have to fear retribution by the U.S. government or their respective state governments. So that was the older resolutions, okay? Now it's gotten to the point where it appears like AIPAC, who's one of the groups that's pushing this, AIPAC and a lot of the far right-wing, super pro-Israeli politicians, they've realized, okay, we can't be that bold with it, that brazen with it. We have to reel it in a little bit. Because, Andrew Cuomo, who backs a lot of these anti-BDS bills and tried to, I think, implemented one in New York, he hilariously called for a boycott of, I think it was Indiana, or it may have been another Republican state, but because a right-wing state did a piece of anti-LGBTQ legislation, he urged New Yorkers, hey, don't go there. We're boycotting that state. So according to Andrew Cuomo, in the United States of America, you have every right to boycott the United States of America, another state in the United States of America, but you shouldn't be allowed to boycott Israel. You want to talk about absurd favoritism, and you want to talk about an obvious illegal and unconstitutional crackdown on freedom of speech and the First Amendment. Well, there it is right there. So, since, these politicians realized we can't go that far because that's obviously unconstitutional, well, what are we going to do? And somebody came up with the brilliant idea of, what if we say, well, we oppose BDS and we oppose all attempts to delegitimize the state of Israel. What if we did that, but we also made clear in the same resolution, like, oh yeah, by the way, you're still legally allowed and constitutionally allowed to, have free speech and boycott whoever you want to boycott. All we're saying is the U.S. government is, in this weaselly-ass resolution, that we officially condemn and we oppose any efforts to delegitimize the state of Israel and any support of BDS. And also, of course, in the same resolution, because it's the whole point of the resolution, there's an attempt to conflate good faith criticism of Israel and support of BDS with, say it with me, anti-Semitism. That's the whole point of this. So that, the Republicans can turn around and say, well, look at these. Who didn't support this resolution? Look at these anti-Semites. Can you believe that they hate all Jews? That's how this is going to be used. And if you're a Democrat and you supported this, and then at any point in the future, you say something maybe against illegal settlements, let's say, they're going to turn around and they're going to accuse you of being a hypocrite. They're going to say, well, look at your position on the BDS resolution. You agreed that it's anti-Semitic to criticize Israel and to criticize the settlements and try to take action. And now you're criticizing the settlements? Well, you're either a hypocrite or an anti-Semite also now, aren't you? Again, AIPAC is behind this. They're pushing it. And I hope you're sitting down. I'm going to tell you who the people were, the brave people who opposed this resolution, okay? Blumenauer, Carson, Dingell, Garcia, Grijalva, Jayapal, Barbara Lee, Massey, McCollum, Moore, Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, Pingree, Pocan, Rush, Tlaib, Watson, Coleman. Those are the only congresspeople who said, you know what? No, we're not playing this game. It's not the job or the business of the U.S. government to, I officially condemn and I'm against the boycotts in this instance. Bad. I oppose it. I condemn it. What business is it of the U.S. government what free citizens do in a free society and who they choose to boycott and what they want to do? I'll answer that for you. None. And I would argue that's also unconstitutional. Because they are saying we officially condemn this political viewpoint, this specific political viewpoint. Fuck out of here with that nonsense. What a joke. So I told you, everybody, these are the people who, oppose this terrible resolution. So thank you to all those people who oppose this resolution. Some of the people, by the way, again, 398 to 17 was the vote. So only 17 did the right thing. The people who did the wrong thing include Katie Porter, who's supposed to be a lovely progressive, Ayanna Pressley, Ro Khanna, and Tulsi Gabbard. That's embarrassing. And that's shameful. Now, I'm going to level with you guys. That is a giant stain on their records. Giant stain. You think we're not viewing this kindly right now? The left is not viewing this kindly right now? Take a look at history in 30 years, 40 years, 50 years from now, and how they'll look at your vote on this resolution. Because, just so we're clear, the best analogy one can make about this is, in apartheid South Africa, the United States was allied with the racist, white South African government. We were pro-apartheid, okay? What we're talking about here is the equivalent of the U.S. Congress saying, we condemn the efforts to protest and to boycott South African apartheid, because South Africa's an ally of ours, and you're delegitimizing the state of South Africa. So we officially oppose and condemn a boycott and protest of the racist South African regime. That is exactly what the equivalent is. That's what it is. That's the analogy. It makes perfect sense. So you think we're mad and we're upset today, lefties today, looking at our otherwise wonderful representatives who betrayed us here? Wait until the future when they're writing in the history books about your, the kind of what your record is, what your legacy is as a congressperson. And there's a little asterisk that mentions, by the way, they supported an official condemnation of the only peaceful movement to try to bring about Palestinian human dignity and human rights. And let me ask these people a question. If not BDS, please explain in detail what, in your mind, Palestinians are allowed to do. Because obviously, if they use violence, you condemn that and you say that's terrible. Some would say Palestinians have a right to self-defense. If Israel has a right to defend itself, do Palestinians have a right to defend themselves? But obviously, needless to say, because every time it's happened, that's been the response. When Palestinians use violence, you go, oh, I condemn that. That's terrible. That's wrong. That's evil. Any violence by the Palestinians is by definition offensive in the eyes and the mind of a lot of these congresspeople. Okay, so they can't use violence. Got it. That's immoral. Sure. But then what are they allowed to do? BDS is an attempt to be non-violent and to bring about Palestinian human rights and dignity. And by the way, for the record here, there's a lot of misinformation on BDS. BDS states on their own website that we're not taking a position as to two-state solution or one-state solution. We're just saying Palestinians deserve their human rights. And also, there is a difference, let's be clear, and this bill makes no distinctions, but there is a difference between BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanctions of all Israel, and BDS of illegal settlements. This bill makes no distinction. It just condemns all of BDS and implies it's all anti-Semitic and it's all hating all Jews. When Ayanna Pressley tried to do, a little tweet thread about this to explain her vote, American Jews from her own district responded and said, because Ayanna Pressley tried to use their identity to shield herself. And they responded and they were like, no. I'm a Jewish American. I'm one of your constituents. I totally agree with you. Keep my name and my identity out of your mouth. Not interested in you using us to deflect and obfuscate from your shitty-ass vote. So this is disgusting. BDS is the only nonviolent way to try to bring about Palestinian human rights and dignity. And some of our best congresspeople were on the wrong side of this. There's no excuse for this. There's no amount of rationalization or obfuscation or terrible arguments that can wiggle your way out of this one. There's not even a shred. Like sometimes there are, pieces of legislation where I look at them and I go, no, this one isn't cut and dry. This one isn't really all that clear. I think there's an argument for a good progressive to be on either side of this one. Plenty of instances like that. This is not one of those instances. Now, having said that all, I want to lead you with Rashida Tlaib. She gave a very moving statement on this issue. Let's watch.
I stand before you as the granddaughter of Palestinian grandmother, my city, who yearns to experience equality, human dignity, and freedom. I stand before you, the daughter of Palestinian immigrants, parents who experience being stripped of their human rights, the right to freedom of travel, equal treatment. So I can't stand by and watch this attack on our freedom of speech and the right to boycott the racist policies of the government and the state of Israel. I love our country's freedom of speech, Madam Speaker. Dissent is how we nurture democracy and grow to be better and more humane and just. And this is why I oppose Resolution 243. All Americans have a right, a constitutional right, guaranteed by the First Amendment to freedom of speech, to petition their government and to participate in boycotts. Speech in pursuit of civil and human rights at home and abroad is protected by our First Amendment. That is one reason why our First Amendment is so powerful. With a few exceptions, the government is simply not allowed to discriminate against speech based on its viewpoint or its speaker. The right to boycott is deeply rooted in the fabric of our country. What was the Boston Tea Party but a boycott? Where would we be now without the boycott led by civil rights activists in the 1950s and 60s, like the Montgomery bus boycott and the United Farm Workers grape boycott? Some of this country's most important advances in racial equality and equity and workers' rights has been achieved through collective action protected by our Constitution. Americans of conscience have long and proud history of participating in boycotts, specifically to advocate for human rights abroad. Americans boycotted Nazi Germany in response to dehumanization, imprisonment, and genocide of Jewish people. In the 1980s, many of us in this very body boycotted South African goods in the fight against apartheid. Our right to free speech is being threatened with this resolution. It sets a dangerous precedent because it attempts to delegitimize a certain people's political speech and to send a message that our government can and will take action against speech it doesn't like. Madam Speaker, the Supreme Court has time and time again recognized that expressive conduct is protected by the Constitution. From burning a flag to baking a cake, efforts to restrict and target that protected speech run the risk of eroding the civil rights that form the foundation of our democracy. All Americans have the right to participate in boycotts, and I oppose all legislative efforts that target speech. I urge Congress, state governments, and civil rights leaders from all communities to preserve our Constitution, preserve our Bill of Rights, and preserve the First Amendment's guarantee of freedom of speech by opposing H.Res. 246 and the anti-boycott efforts wherever they rise. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Israel is not interested in a two-state solution. Israel is not interested in a one-state solution. Israel's not interested in a solution. So since that's the case, you have to force them to be interested in a solution. Now, most of the people who watch this show would agree, and I've been clear with my position on this all along. I think you want to avoid violence at all costs. You have a right to self-defense, but I also think it's incumbent upon everybody to avoid violence. So, that being said, what's the best possible answer to try to bring about change, force change? BDS, boycotts, divestments, and sanctions. By the way, it's working in many of the occupied territories, just so you know, which is why they're scrambling to try to condemn it. And this is as of maybe 2 or 3 years ago, but at least 20% of the businesses that were stationed in occupied territories have left the occupied territories. Why? Because they were feeling the hurt, because they were being boycotted, and there were consequences for terrible actions. And I'd like to know where all my free speech warriors are on this. And don't give me the bullshit, well, the resolution that's specifically to condemn free speech, the resolution that says the government officially opposes boycott efforts of a specific state, it's not really against free speech because it also says in the same Weasley-ass resolution that this doesn't have teeth and that we still support free speech even though the whole point of the resolution is to be against free speech. So without using any obviously shitty, Weasley, stupid arguments, where are all my free speech warriors? Ben Shapiro? Rafe Dubin? Where you at? Oh, that's right. You only trot that out to badger pink-haired college kids who are confused. When it comes time for actual official crackdowns on free speech, like the First Amendment, like the government taking action against speech, well, I don't like that speech. So yeah, that I'm cool with cracking down on. Frauds. All of you frauds.